Which of the following functions has a negative leading coefficient? So the first thing I realize is that I have a lot of answer choices here that are not in standard form. Now that's totally okay. What we can do though on some of them is convert it to standard form. Recall that standard form of a quadratic, okay, is going to have the following form. It's going to be, the function will be equal to some constant a multiplied by x squared plus some constant b multiplied then by x, and then plus some constant c, okay? Now, we don't really need this form in order to determine the negative leading coefficient, but on some of them it might be very beneficial. So for example, for the first choice here, we realize that this is not in standard form. It doesn't follow this, nor is it actually in vertex form. I'm going to cover that in a second. So what we can do is we can kind of distribute this x squared term, and we're going to try to turn this into this, okay? Now the way we're going to do that, like I said, is we're going to first distribute the 4x to each of the two terms inside of that binomial. So 4x times x is going to be 4x squared, and then 4x times 2 is going to be a positive 8x. And then we just still have that positive 2. So as you can see now, this is in standard form. This matches this perfectly, where the a value is going to be 4, positive 4, the b value is positive 8, and the c value then is positive 2. So this one does not have a negative leading coefficient. By negative leading coefficient, remember we mean the a value. So that choice is out. Next, we're going to look at our second choice. And I realize that this does not have the standard form. However, this is actually in vertex form. Now, we can make a determination as to what the negative leading coefficient is in vertex form. So first thing is, what is vertex form? So vertex form is going to have the, well, following form. It's going to have the leading coefficient a, and that's going to be then multiplied now, all right, by x minus some term, some constant h. And then it's going to be plus some constant k, all right? And don't forget that this thing has to be squared, all right? This binomial here has to be squared. If it's not squared, it's not a quadratic. So that's why this first example was not a, it was a quadratic because we had the x on the outside, but it wasn't in vertex form because we didn't have that squared on the top, okay? Now, what I can do here is I don't have to put this into standard form. We could, by squaring this term and foiling it on out, but we really don't need to, all right? In other words, if I just take this and rearrange it slightly, I'm going to have the vertex form. So I'm going to put this term first. Instead of the 5, this is really the k value. I'm going to put this term first. So it's going to be x minus 2, all right, squared, and then plus 5, right? There's no sign in front of 5, so that assumes it's going to be positive. And that's basically it. Now, recall that you don't see a leading coefficient here. Like if you notice this term, and maybe I'll erase here a little bit so that we can really see, what's going on. So this 2 is really, I'll put that in purple. Okay, I'll put that in purple. So that's the h value. This 5 over here is really the k value, so I'll put that in purple. Okay, and there's nothing really in front. Now, if there's nothing in front, we can place in a 1, right? Because that is indeed the leading coefficient. It's actually a 1 there. And since this was in this expression here, it was plus this whole term, there must have been a positive 1 right there in the front. So I know that that leading coefficient there, or that term in front of our binomial, is going to be a plus 1. So this is actually the a term. It's a positive 1. And again, that's not a leading coefficient of negative. All right, it's positive. So that choice is out. Next, we'll take a look at our third term. And I notice already this is kind of beautifully in the vertex form already. I don't really have to do any manipulation. I can kind of just look at this leading coefficient there of a 3, and it is indeed positive. It's not negative. So I already know right off the bat that this is going to be a positive, has a positive leading coefficient, has a positive a value. So last but not least, I guess that means by process of elimination, we would have this as our answer choice. But we notice now that this is beautifully kind of in the vertex form. All right. Again, we can always convert this into standard if we wanted. We would just have to FOIL that binomial, or that squared binomial. But we notice that there's a negative sign in front of this binomial. What that's really saying is that we have a -1 leading coefficient, and that's then going to be multiplied. Let me just change the color there. That's going to be then multiplied by my x. In this case, it's a plus, so that's fine, but it doesn't match it perfectly, but don't worry about that. It's not really important for right now. It will be, we're going to cover more specifically about this vertex form in a later series. If you're on the website, glazersguide.com, you'll see this coming up under the quadratic chapter. But the 1 here, that's the h value, and don't forget to square that term, all right? And then we're going to have plus our k value, and that's going to be a 6. So here we have our a value, right? That is the leading coefficient, and that leading coefficient is indeed a -1. So that means that we have this as the correct answer. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you loved what you saw here, take a look at our website, glazersguide.com. We have a ton of practice examples there for you, and we really want to help you along on your journey. We'll see you soon.
For more practice and for more fun, go to glazersguide.com.
And for more practice and for more fun, come on, go to glazersguide.com.